Is the spiritual heart a topic of clinical cardiology? This is the question I will try to answer with my lecture. Looking into religious and spiritual traditions, the heart always has been seen as a major organ, as a sacred place, as the center of physical, emotional, and spiritual life, regulating health and disease, as Niels Witt nicely outlined in his lecture. Also in Christian tradition, the heart is the central organ, representing personhood and integrating all dimensions of the human existence. In modern medicine and science, this is certainly not the case anymore. The brain became the master organ. Neuroscience gets much more attention than heart science. There's a clear shift from the heart to the brain, also related to studies on spirituality. So I really believe that there's a need to rebalance this relationship, and I hope I can add some evidence for the centrality of the heart. But before we do that, I prepared a survey for you. So please scan this QR code and put in your maximum of 3 terms you would associate with the heart. But I can't show it now because it's not working. I'm sorry for that. So I would like to reflect on the concept of the spiritual heart. How can we conceptualize this spiritual heart? And I will try to do that as part of my lecture. There's a very interesting publication on the spiritual heart in the religions by Micheline Anderson. She's a co-worker of Lisa Miller at Columbia University. And she says, here we suggest a central bidirectional relationship between the heart, the master organ, and the phenomenology of spiritual experiences. Further, we provide existing evidence for a synergetic, salutogenic relationship between robust cardiac function and spiritual well-being that may offer a roadmap to spiritual, psychological, and physical recovery in health, in the individual, interpersonal, and even global. So these are big words, but what she basically says is a bidirectional relationship between the heart and spiritual experiences. Coming from a psychosocial background, the biopsychosocial model is really the basis of everything we do. The spiritual heart is an integration of these 3 other dimensions, as we already heard. It's noetic or personal, as we heard from Niels Witt. It's strengthened by spirituality and religious or spiritual experiences, like prayer or the meditation. And it's somehow related to the transcendent. And it's interacting with the autonomic nervous system, like stress buffering and other phenomena. So the question is there evidence, is there medical or scientific evidence for something like a spiritual heart? There's a very interesting publication from Bernson and Chachopon on spirituality and autonomic cardiac control. They investigated 229 middle-aged or older adults. They assessed patterns of cardiac autonomic function like heart rate variability. Pre-ejection period is a measure for sympathetic activity and cardiac autonomic regulation. They assessed spirituality as closeness to God. What they found was that spirituality was associated with enhanced parasympathetic and sympathetic cardiac control, resulting in a higher cardiac autonomic regulation. That means spirituality seems somehow in the interaction with the autonomic system to regulate autonomic functions, to improve parasympathetic tone and balance in our autonomic nervous system. Gives us some evidence that there is a bidirectional or an interaction between spirituality or spiritual practices and our autonomic nervous system. I would just like to share with you another example research we did ourselves on cardiovascular reactivity. Cardiovascular reactivity is a central concept in psychophysiology. It means the cardiovascular response to mental, social, or physical stress. Typical measures are heart rate or heart rate variability, blood pressure or blood pressure variability. Typically, you stress patients or participants in the study, and you see what's going to happen. You see blood pressure goes up in the stress period, and it comes down in the recovery period. So we did a doctoral thesis on blood pressure reactivity and recovery. We investigated 32 healthy young adults, male and female. We assessed psychological measures like depression and anger, as well as centrality of religiosity as a religious measure. Then we built a stress protocol using college Stroop test, the polar words stress test, the mental stress test, and also social stress test. It has usually much stronger impacts on cardiovascular reactivity. This is what you see here. You see this is the stress, this is the blood pressure here. This is the baseline period. This was the college Stroop test. And then this was social stress test. So it went up much more. And then this was the recovery period here, going down to baseline. And what did we find? We made two groups. We made the non-religious, minor religious, and then the higher religious by this centrality scale. You see these two groups here is in German. I'm sorry for that. The first one, the first graphs you see, this is the reactivity. That means how strong blood pressure goes up during the stress test. And you see there was a difference between the two groups, but it was not significant. But what we saw is in the recovery period, that means how quickly blood pressure goes down to the baseline, there was a significant difference between the religious and the non-religious. The religious are the violet ones. And this graph shows us that somehow the more religious have better recovery, parasympathetic balance, and better recovery by that. Another example that shows us how spirituality or centrality here in this scale is interacting with cardiovascular physiology. So this is the activity, I just mentioned that, and that's recovery here. That's a complex regulation, and I guess Andrew Newberg will tell us more about this. Basically, stress reactivity is regulated on 3 levels. The frontal limbic system, regulating cognitions and emotions mainly. Then we have the hypothalamus in the brainstem, and then we have the peripheral organs here, the heart. And somewhere in the process, religiosity or spirituality comes in. Long I thought this is just a cognitive thing, cognitive psychology of religion, having an impact on stress regulation. I think it's on a different level of spiritual practices. And then let's talk about the heart-brain interaction. And there's another interesting study here from McCready about cardiac coherence, self-regulation, autonomic stability, and psychosocial well-being. He basically says that self-regulation of feelings intimately tied to physiology. That means emotion regulation, but probably also cognitive regulation, is linked with cardiovascular physiology and with the interaction with the heart. You have the heart down here, and there's a lot of afferent information going to the brain. There's more afferent information going to the brain than from the brain to the heart. By this, operating brain functions by these afferent pathways. And then the brain reacts on this information, is this heart-brain interaction or heart-brain coherence. You have somewhere religion and spirituality coming into the system, improving the regulation, improving the heart-brain interaction. Let's talk about the biological heart. As the biological heart, today medicine is giving us a much more holistic view of the heart. The heart is our high-performance pump, 100,000 heartbeats a day, pumps 7 to 10,000 liter blood through our body. It's regulated in a millisecond period. The RR, peaks of the ECG curves are never the same. And then the heart also has an electromagnetic field. I think we know about what this electromagnetic field does. We need this field to record the ECG does, and this is 5 times stronger than the brain. The heart is also a neuroendocrine organ. It produces peptides. For example, natriuretic peptide is an important peptide to regulate myocardial function. We use that also for assessing heart failure. But the heart also produces neuropeptides like enkephalines. It is an endogenous opioids. The discovery of the neuroendocrine function of the heart provided a shift from the classical paradigm of a blood pump to a self-regulating organ. And even more than that, there's a brain-like nervous system around and inside the heart. It's called the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. You see this here, it's the yellow parts around the heart, but it's not only around the heart, it's also inside the heart muscles. You have a lot of nerve cells regulating the heart. And also this brain-like nervous system produces catecholamines like adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine, but also neurotransmitters like serotonin, important for the remodeling after myocardial infarction. And it interacts with basically all the other organs as the brain that we just have seen. And also the heart has a memory function. This became relevant in heart transplantation. You know, I was caring for people with heart transplantation. They always feared that maybe there's another person now in my chest. Maybe I have other behaviors, maybe I get other thoughts. And for a long time, cardiology said, no, there's no evidence for that. But more and more, we see that there is evidence. There's really a memory function also in the heart, and this can be transmitted from one person to another. So as a summary, the heart is much more than a high-performance pump. It's a neuroendocrine organ with the intracardial nerve system, including memory. It highly interacts with the brain and other organs. Therefore, a biological heart itself is more holistic than we usually think. Then a second aspect, the psychosocial heart. What are the psychosocial aspects here as part of this integrated, maybe called spiritual heart? After the biological and the behavioral risk factor, cardiology realized that there are also psychosocial risk factors. There was a landmark publication here from Alan Rodzansky from New York, Impact of Psychosocial Factors on the Pathogenesis of Cardiovascular Disease and Implications for Therapy. These psychosocial risk factors now became part of the guidelines, of European and American guidelines. I don't want to go into that. Just showing you one example. Depression is, heart and depression is very much linked. And what you see here, these are patients with myocardial infarction and how their survival curves. It's like a dose response profile, The higher the depression, the lower the survival. So to treat depression in post-myocardial infarction became a standard today. After psychosocial risk factors, positive psychosocial factor came into the scope of cardiology. There's a nice mini review on positive psychosocial well-being and cardiovascular health. Mary Princip, who is one of the authors here, will present this mini review in our symposium on Saturday. Summarized in this nice diagram, eudaimonic well-being or factors, including dimensions like meaning. Of this other group, more the hedonic well-being aspects, including happiness. And then in the middle, you have some other factors not going into these categories. For example, hope, optimism. And more, we know that all these factors, optimism, hope, meaning, these are markers of spirituality. This is one nice publication here. Don't worry, be happy. Positive effects and reduced 10-year incidence coronary heart disease. Or another one, the association between life purpose and mortality. This is general mortality, but also cardiovascular mortality. Basically the same thing here. The higher life purpose is, the yellow one, better is the survival. The less they get cardiovascular or coronary artery disease. We did a nice study here in Basel with the UK Biobank. We looked into positive psychosocial factors and how they contribute to the prediction of coronary artery disease. Also, Professor Batake was involved in this project. We had a nice research team. This amazing UK Biobank, including more than 500,000 citizens. The bad thing is that in this amazing biobank, no measures of spirituality. It would be amazing, if we had a measure of spirituality in this biobank, we could look for all kinds of associations. This is what we found, just to give you some result. We had two endpoints. One endpoint was myocardial infarction, and the other endpoint was chronic coronary artery disease. And you see the happiness. This is the happiness here. General happiness is just one question. How happy do you feel? And you see those who felt more happy developed less coronary artery disease. Satisfaction in life is another factor they assessed quite well here in the biobank. Satisfaction with your family relationships was a strong factor, protecting coronary artery disease, and also satisfaction with your financial. We could repeat what already has been shown, that these positive psychosocial factors here, happiness, of satisfaction in life, have a positive impact on cardiovascular health. There are also quite a number of studies on religion, spirituality, and cardiovascular health. And I would like to give you some evidence on being investigated here. We have this beautiful handbook of health, Koenig. It's a whole chapter on cardiovascular health and diseases, summarizing the studies. This is out of a publication. They made a corpus review on the number of studies being done. It's from 1990 to 2024. You see the numbers of study done also in this area is going up. What I found very amazing, we talked about most of this research is coming out of the United States. This is still true. The United States is number one, but in the second position we have Iran. The Islamic world is very interested in this kind of research. Conferences, I had the opportunity to participate in one of these conferences. To give a somehow big picture, there is a nice meta-analysis on religion, spirituality, and mortality. There are more than 150 studies investigating this relationship. These are the results here. In healthy populations, you see that all effects of religion or spirituality on mortality is 18%. There's an 18% reduction of mortality. I think this is quite impressive. This is quite a good medication. What you also see here is cardiovascular. There are not so many studies, only 6 here in this meta-analysis, but the cardiovascular system is sensitive to emotional, but also to spiritual and religious aspects or influences. Mortality reduction of 28%. This is quite impressive. Let me show you one of these studies. This is my favorite nun study from Italy on Benedictine nuns. It was a cohort study, longitudinal study. They followed up the nuns and matched women outside of the monastery for 30 years. And what they saw here, this is blood pressure, what you see here. Usually blood pressure goes up with age, this is what happens in all of us. Blood pressure goes up with age because of changes in our biology of our vessels. But in these nuns, it hardly didn't go up. This is quite amazing, blood pressure or hypertension is one of the main risk factors for cardiovascular, especially for coronary artery disease. So their lifestyle somehow makes a difference in their cardiovascular system, here assessed by blood pressure. And if you look at the mortality, fatal and non-fatal events, then you see the nuns in relation to the laywoman, they have much better survival curves for both fatal and non-fatal events. Both is absolutely significant. So this kind of lifestyle seems to be really cardioprotective. And we can think about what it is. We can think about what are the ingredients of this religious or spiritual lifestyle. And also, we have here the biological and also the psychosocial risk factor And for most of these risk factors, it has been shown that the religious lifestyle improves, lowers cholesterol, they have better blood pressure, they smoke less, there's better nutrition, also less depression, less hostility, and all kind of these established cardiovascular risk factors. And maybe it is part of the story how this kind of lifestyle impacts cardiovascular disease. This is one study we did in Austria. This is about coping with bypass surgery. This is the center where I did my training in cardiology. We had a lot of patients after bypass surgery. And I just wondered whether religion would have an impact on coping with bypass. I could recruit 51 patients after bypass surgery. They completed some questionnaires. We had all the medical data. What was interesting for me already, that about 50% of these patients used some kind of religion or religiosity or spirituality to cope with their surgery. This was Austria. It is mainly Catholic area. But either they went to see a priest or either family members were praying for them. About 50% knew about some kind of spiritual support. Here are the significant results. Those who said religion is important for me, they had less complications. Those who said I pray privately, they also had less complications and had better left ventricular function. Those who said I often go to church, religious attendance, had better ventricular function. And those who said I did pray myself for my heart surgery, those had better health after the surgery. Quite amazed because in line with the results we know from the United States, reproduced this in Austria, in a European country. Only 50 participants. I think we need bigger studies to better evidence. But I was quite impressed about these results. So time is running out. What are the consequences for care? There's a very interesting publication from Kavita Chinayan. She's an Indian doctor in the United States, an Indian cardiologist, basically. And she published this article in the European Heart Journal. There are not many publications on the topic, especially in European Heart Journal. And she basically said spirituality or spiritual practices promote relaxation. They promote relaxation in the autonomic nervous system. They support parasympathetic function. They improve parasympathetic balance, and therefore they reduce sympathetic tone, promoting cardiovascular diseases. And it also reduces endocrine function and inflammation. There's a ESC TV. This is not European Song Contest. This is European Society of Cardiology. They have some kind of TV. And she was there in this TV, showed some evidence on the preferences of our patients, of cardiac patients, on getting spiritual care. In all the different conditions you see, about 30% wish that spirituality is assessed, spiritual history is made. And this is an interesting statement. I think we go over that. She talks about reframing, how spirituality can reframe how we understand our medical condition, our heart disease here. And basically, it's the same also for cardiac patients. Primary spiritual care should be done also by cardiology to support spirituality of these cardiac patients. There's just one patient of mine. It's a patient with cardiomyopathy. There's a weakness of the heart muscle. The heart gets more and more insufficient and more heart failure. We dealt with blood pressure, with medication, with all the medical stuff. But then he clearly said he's emotionally affected by this heart disease. He had symptoms of depression, and he was looking for support, also for emotional support. And finally, he said, this is for me an existential crisis. Somehow lost my connection to myself, to my heart, to my life. And I think that is where really existential dimension comes in, and spirituality becomes relevant in our everyday clinical practice. So let me stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.